So we have there's different names for psi. There's different names for these phenomenon. As human beings, we like to put a name on everything. We like to categorize things and put them into little categories. So these are the common names for the different types of psi that have been observed and experienced. So one of the most familiar ones is telepathy. And this is the whole idea of information exchange between two or more minds without the use of ordinary senses. And mind you here, I'm using the accepted scientific terms here. Like, this is what mainstream science categorizes these things as. I'm not saying that I personally believe that these things are like this. I'm just explaining the concepts behind these kinds of interactions. So telepathy is seen as information exchange between two or more minds without the use of ordinary senses. We have the idea of clairvoyance. This is a French word that means clear seeing. And this one's very tied closely in with remote viewing. And this is information received from a distance beyond the reach of the ordinary senses. So a person being able to get information about an object or a place, something at a distance, there's no other mind involved, so to speak. So telepathy is like reading another person's mind, so to speak. Whereas clairvoyance would be like reading objects, getting information about anything without the help of any other person. It's the French word for clear seeing. And then we have the idea of PK, or psychokinesis. This is like spoon bending, moving objects, stuff you see in the movies that most people take as fantasy. This is mental interaction with animate or inanimate matter. Yeah, mind-matter interaction, PK, or telekinesis. You got the whole scene in The Matrix where the kid bends the spoon and he says, Neo's having this experience where he sees this spoon bend. And that's a example of PK, or psychokinesis. So these are the three main different names for psi. And then we have precognition. So precognition is seeing something in the future before it happens. Information perceived about future events, where information couldn't be inferred by ordinary means. Some variations on this include premonition, which is a foreboding of an unfavorable future event, and presentiment, a sensing of a future emotion. And a lot of people have experienced this in their life. I've had a couple of precognitive experiences in my life, and many people have them in the forms of dreams. Some people have it in the form of like a premonition or a foreboding, a feeling that something bad is going to happen soon, or something's going to happen in the future. So I try to make a little diagram here. So we have our whole idea of the forward flow of time moving this way into the future. We have our person here in the present. And here's a future event, a stage collapsing at a rock concert. The whole idea of precognition is somehow this information, which we think of as being in the future, somehow moves back in time to the present, to the person in the now, who can give information about this event before it happens. If you check out The Conscious Universe by Dean Radin, or Supernormal by Dean Radin, he explains the experiments that he did, which measure presentiment and precognition using images displayed on a screen. Basically, a person's hooked up to electrodes, and their skin conductance is monitored. And what Dean Radin found out was that when emotionally exciting pictures were going to appear on the screen, people's bodies reacted before the picture was displayed on the screen. So let's say there's a picture of a snake that was going to appear in 2 seconds. The person's body would be reacting before the actual image of the snake appeared. Whereas when there's a calm picture, like some flowers or a rabbit that comes up on the screen, there's no presentment happening. The body is not having this stimulated response to the future event. So we were able to pick up, our bodies are able to pick up on these future emotions, future events, and things that are happening. And our conscious minds aren't always aware of this. You know what I mean? It's a very, very subtle thing. And of course, skin conductance equipment can pick up this kind of stuff. So how do we test this in the lab, right? People want to know, how can we repeat this over and over? Is this scientific? Is this a bunch of hogwash? What is it? Well, there's two main types of experiments that have had success in showing psi in the lab. One is called a forced choice experiment, and this is one most people are probably familiar with, which is where a participant is forced to choose from a set of answers or outcomes. You've all probably seen the star, square, circle, plus, wave cards. And maybe if you've ever played with your friends, or messing around with your friends, you try and guess the card that the other person has or something like that. This is a forced choice experiment. So you know the possible outcomes and you have to choose from one, sort of like a multiple choice test. And this had some good results. People were able to perceive the card that was being concealed, but it had they experienced something called the decline effect. And this was that in the beginning of the experiments, they were scoring above chance. People would be nailing them, getting above chance results on selecting the correct Zener cards. But then over time, as the subjects got bored of this same task, there's only 5 choices. You're going to eventually, repeating these star, square, circle, plus in your mind over and over again, eventually it gets boring and repetitive, and the scores declined after a while. So it was scoring above chance in the beginning, and then it took a decline after a while. And this became troublesome because the probabilities, the results weren't staying the same. They were decreasing over time. And this is where the more successful experiment comes in. This is called a free choice, free response experiment. And this is where the participant is free to respond with anything that comes to their mind. So there's no pre-selected outcomes. These are like the telepathy experiments. Like if someone draws an image, a hidden image, and now you're going to try and draw what that hidden image is. This is a free response test. This is a free response experiment where you could draw anything. You could say anything. You can draw anything. Yeah, there's no limit to what you're going to express, whatever perceptions that come to you. And this is how remote viewing experiments work. These are free response experiments. And although these experiments have had success, they introduce imagination or noise. See, is where with the forced choice experiments, there is only a set choices to choose from. Therefore, it doesn't leave space for you to imagine things and bring in new ideas from your imagination that have nothing to do with the target. Whereas in remote viewing and other free response experiments, the thing you're supposed to be perceiving could be anything. So there's a higher chance of what we call noise, which is incorrect information, or your imagination getting involved, right? Because there's less limits. You're opening the boundaries of what the target could be. Therefore, you're introducing a higher chance for imagination. So hopefully you can understand the difference between those, forced choice and free response. We're going to be focusing on free response with the remote viewing. These are the experiments that we're going to be interested in here.